The long-awaited final season of Alice in Borderland was released just a few days ago, and just like last time, I simply had to talk about what happened. While the story was originally meant to end in Season 2, with the manga it's based on ending in the same spot, something possessed the showrunners to keep the story going for our beloved characters. This can both be a blessing and a curse, as giving the protagonists a much cleaner and satisfying ending can give the audience peace of mind and tie up any loose ends, but screwing that ending up will only result in the whole show being a wash. Need an example? Squid Game. What was once a pretty solid miniseries that left us with a sliver of optimism became a show where despite everything we are doomed to save anyone and the elite always win. Come watch our American spin-off, we didn't understand our own message about capitalism. Fortunately, Alice in Borderland doesn't have as many themes about class or inequality, so Netflix will have a much harder time undermining the message of this show. In this video, I'm just going to give my thoughts on what I thought of the season while avoiding major spoilery areas. To cut right to the chase, I think Season 3 of Alice in Borderland was a worthwhile addition to the series and thoroughly expands on the themes and character arcs from the past seasons. While the allegory for what the Borderland stood for was subtle before, this time around they elected to frame the narrative around the characters finding out what that place is. If you weren't aware, the Borderland is where you go between life and death, and only those who fight the hardest to survive their near-death experiences can live to see another day in the real world. Watching Arisu and the others find ways to enter this world with an absolute time limit set a much more intense outer atmosphere to the events that colored the narrative quite nicely. For the first time in the series, the characters pretty much know why they're here and can focus on surviving and escaping without the big mysteries looming over it all. The main antagonist of the season was a bit strange, admittedly, as his goal is to make Arisu stay in the Borderland forever, but they never really sold me on what made Arisu so important, and what he even wanted to do with Arisu was never really explained. The pseudo-antagonist, Ryuji, was also a bit of a weak spot of the season. At the beginning, I thought he was just going to be a new main character to follow and be invested in, but his cold demeanor and blatant disregard for the lives of others made him dislikable and hard to root for, which would be fine if he had more of a villainous presence, but he never really goes too far in the story, always pulling back from doing anything evil. This just makes him feel like a morally ambiguous fence rider, who doesn't really live up to the strong protagonists or antagonists from before. It was cool to see how a paraplegic character would survive in this world, to give him some credit, but I just wish he had a stronger presence and was more of an active foil to Arisu's character. He's basically the opposite of Arisu in every way, which would have made focusing on the rivalry much more interesting. Perhaps Ryuji played one additional game with Arisu before the final one, where they butted heads just a little bit more often. Obviously that would lead down a rabbit hole of butterfly effects, but suffice to say I wanted more from Ryuji than we got. Speaking of the devil, Arisu was handled pretty damn well this season. After 5 years of living his best life with Usagi, Arisu hadn't struggled very hard in the years since their brush with death. Usagi, on the other hand, has still not gotten over her father's suicide, and persuaded by Ryuji's quest to explore the world between life and death, Usagi goes back to Borderland to work through her trauma. Arisu, never willing to abandon the love of his life, puts his life on the line to make sure she escapes unharmed. This is Arisu's primary motivation for the season, and the themes of perseverance, companionship, and finding the will to live all weave around his and Usagi's journey. As per usual, it's structured around deadly children's games that spell certain doom for 90% of the characters, but what sets this apart from, I'll say it, Squid Game, is that the characters are incredibly smart and physically adept for any challenge, making it a thrill to watch them overcome the insane bullshit thrown their way. And by the end, there's still a handful of underdogs that live to see another bright and shiny day. Though this show is still cartoonishly violent at its core, the blood of hope and optimism course through its veins as well. Now I've got good news and bad news for you Chishiya fans. He and everyone else who survived last season do not come back for more this time around, and while it's a shame that we don't get to see more of Chishiya's amazing intellect at play, you can take solace in the fact that your favorite character from last season is alive and well, and presumably living their best life. On top of that, the new characters take the reins pretty well and are thoroughly enjoyable to root for. My favorite is Rei, who is quirky and hot and enacts one of the smartest plays in the whole season. I also really like Kazuya, who's a Yakuza man who's also morally ambiguous but pulls off some incredible moments of heroism. The last thing I'll talk about is the ending, and because I am trying to avoid major spoilers, all I'm going to say is that the ending was very good and rounded out the season nicely. It even got me a bit misty-eyed, which I'm always looking for in a series finale. We got the ending we deserved, and I could not be happier. In every conceivable way, this was a much better third and final season than Squid Game. Not that they're completely comparable, I just really want every opportunity to express how disappointed I was with Squid Game's ending. I mean, could you imagine if Alice in Borderland ended with a teaser for an American spin-off? That is such an awful way to end a show.
Can I have a beer on tap, please?
I'll do the same, and then a couple waters as well.
Best series since 2002.
Yeah, bro, you got it.
Are you fucking